Welcome back, everyone, to our podcast today. I just say podcast because I neglected to send out the poll to get ourselves a new name. So, TBD philosophy is pending till we get another name, hence the
Yeah.
TBD for today, I
Which,
guess.
by the
But
way, I have the poll ready. I've got the stuff. Like it's all good to go.
okay,
Nice.
then we will get this out for sure afterwards. Thank you, Tanner. But I am really pumped today, you guys, for what I am trying to plan, have in store, present. I have fallen in love, like head over heels, with a new YouTube channel called The Stick of Joseph. They just
Hmm.
basically talk about all sorts of cool Book of Mormon stuff. And today I'm trying to, I was exposed to a theory by them. Um, and then I've just been listening to more and reading more about it. And so I basically was trying to include more and pack in more, and then I would like cut out everything, and then I would do it all of like put in more and then cut everything. And so now that everything's said and done, it's actually kind of short of a presentation. So my cutting out worked. But now I feel like maybe I didn't put enough in between to make it fluid. So I've done a great job stalling for these last 2 minutes. We are going to jump into this presentation. Please feel free to stop at any point and say, Joseph, doesn't make sense. Um, but I just need oh, here we go, presenter view. Okay, put that there, share my screen, and window. There we go. Sorry, I am not as technically adapted as I hope.
All
Hey,
good.
beautiful.
See that? Well, actually, that's kind of ugly. Let's try that again. I'll just present the whole screen. So I won't be able to see you guys. So if you have a comment you would like to make, just please raise your hand and be like, "Hey, Jose." Um, and I also exited out of the presentation. Okay, here we go. So pumped. Okay. Oh, but I'm not sharing my screen now. Share screen, entire window, not entire screen. Okay. Share and present. All right.
Yay!
Doesn't look good
We got
now.
it.
That is beautiful.
Good. Okay. Question to start off. Where did the Old Testament come from? I mean, what have you guys heard? Have you thought about this? Have you not thought about this? What what's your 2 cents on it?
I have thought a lot about this actually, and I feel like it's just like the New Testament. It just has been translated and moved around and rewritten so many times that how trustworthy can it really be? You know? And I don't know. I
All
don't. I
right.
don't think it is. My mission president
Any
said that that was the only book not worth reading.
whoa.
Really? The whole Testament?
Yeah.
That's a
Wow.
that's a pretty hardcore mission
That
president.
is, I mean, I feel like so many of the church's core teachings come from it as well. But
I know, right?
all right, bold statement. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Tanner. I feel like it definitely has been shifted around and edited and revamped. I do think, though, that there's still so much good truth in there. I do believe that it is Word of God, too. Um,
I'm not saying I agree with the mission president. I'm just saying that
yeah,
was his
just
take
putting
on
that
it.
out, which is good. I think something that was interesting for me is just recently this year I learned a little bit about the Deuteronomic Revolution or the Deuteronomists, if you guys are aware of them. But I mean, I'm sure you might get to them, Joseph. I don't want to steal any thunder there if I go forward with that. So I'll leave that in your side of the court.
Yeah. As for where it came from, I feel like a lot of it, like, weren't like the first 5 books written by Moses, and then the rest were written by people after.
Tanner, I was fishing for an answer so hard. Thank you for giving it to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Woo, we got it. Let's go.
And you are spot on. The Deuteronomists are going to have a time to shine in this presentation,
Yeah.
and I would love for you to just unload on us all you have.
Sweet. Also, will you
Um,
push the hide button at the bottom of your screen?
oh yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so uh, just like you said, Tanner, this whole thought of Moses writing the first five, man, that was a belief for centuries, like super long time. And depending on who you ask, that is still who they think. Um, my understanding is that many to most probably really Protestant r religions are really big on being able to rely on and turn to the Bible. I mean, like for example, like Seventh Day Adventists or even Jehovah's Witnesses. Those are Protestant breakoffs who are like such like hardcore letter of what's written in the Bible because that was part of their pushback to the Catholic Church. Is they were like, we don't want to rely on some authoritative body. We believe that we can access God directly through the Bible, you know? And so
Hmm.
so they, if I had to pick a guess on a group, my guess is they would be the ones who you'd find most people thinking it was Moses still. However, most of modern day scholars reject the Moses theory now, even though this was the big belief for a long time. We've kind of decided that it can't be Moses, uh, and have a new theory, the documentary hypothesis. To clarify, this is primarily just really for the Old Testament. It is also a hypothesis. Not everyone agrees with it, though I am now, oh, excuse me, though I am now a convert to this hypothesis. There's still debate in the field, but I'm going to jump into why a theory other than Moses is needed first. Oh, never mind. I'm going to explain what it is first. Would you guys like to just take turns reading these points? Each of these letters is what is thought to be either like an author slash group of authors slash book that was pushed together into the Old Testament.
Okay. Yeah, I'll start and then we'll just switch off every other one. J. The Yahwist source J is the oldest part of the Pentateuch. Is that how you say
I,
that?
I think
I think it's the
Pentateuch.
Pentecost, or shoot, man, I forgot something like that. It's just I think it's just the Greek for like five books or whatever. It's just another way to talk about the Torah, the Old
Okay.
Testament.
Gotcha. The oldest part of the Pentateuch, referring to God as Yahweh.
E refers to God as Elohim rather than Yahweh and is more sensitive to moral issues.
Is that D?
Yeah.
Okay. D. It is essentially the book of Deuteronomy.
And P, it is dominated by genealogies, priestly regulations, and a highly stylized manner of narration.
Okay. So to summarize, the documentary hypothesis is the theory that through the centuries, these four different records have been kind of pushed together, and that's how this hypothesis came to be. That's how the Old Testament came to be. Any questions, thoughts, or concerns up to this point?
Yeah, so just to clarify, you're saying that each letter, JEDP, represents a different book?
Yes.
As in, like
Yeah,
J
each
is like
letter.
Genesis, D is Deuteronomy, E, Exodus, and so forth?
Oh no. As in, well, that this
Is
is
it like
maybe a great way to
styles of
answer it.
writing? Or
Uh, like they're literally like different books that like got put together. So So why do we need the DH? Well, because the DH can explain why there's duplicates in the Bible. Um, could I get could I get one of you to read Genesis 12:10 through 13, 12 through 13, and the other one to read 20:1 through 3?
Yeah. Do you want
Yeah.
to take the first one, and I'll take the second one, Nephi?
Sure. Oh, I have it in Spanish. Let me translate it real fast. Okay.
I know cool
NIV,
people learning
ESV.
different languages.
I'm only getting the. Okay, here we go. Here's KJV. Okay. So, chapter 12, 10, 13, maybe. And there was a famine in the land, and Abraham went down into Egypt to sojourn there. For the famine was grievous in the land. And it came to pass, when he was come near to enter into Egypt, that he said unto Sarai, his wife, Behold now, I know that thou art a fair woman to look upon. Therefore it shall come to pass, when the Egyptians shall see thee, that they shall say, This is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will save thee alive. Say, I pray thee, thou art my sister, that it may be well with me for thy sake, and my soul shall live because of thee.
And then this is 21 through 3. Abraham journeyed from thence toward the south country, and dwelled between Kadesh and Shur, and sojourned in Gerar. And Abraham said of Sarah his wife, She is my sister. And Abimelech king of Gerar sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech, and in a dream by night, and said unto him, Behold, thou art a dead man, for the woman which thou hast taken, for she is a man's wife. Interesting.
Okay, so this is the story of Abraham, right? When he like is pretending his wife is his sister. This story is in 3 different places in Genesis. Like, what? What? Porque? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
um, that happened again with like Jacob's name change to Israel. The I just had that section there of a couple to read from. You guys can see my screen still, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, Bible
This is
brisket.
I don't know where I don't know why they got that name, but I thought that was funny. But I love this breakdown these guys did. Um, here are all these are just a ton of different duplicated stories happening in the Old Testament, and they've color coded where they think each story came from. So going back to your question, Nephi, when you said like is each letter like the book of Genesis and then the book of Exodus, uh, no, it's more so that mm, there were different. Excuse me, at least for J and E, the idea is that they were, and potentially like P, they were their own separate books, like their own. It was a book of Genesis here, a book of Genesis here, and then they put them together, and you have these duplicates. Is that is that fascinating? I mean, I know we read the Old Testament, right, in seminary. I guess not all of it though, huh? Because they only have required sections that we have to read. But I have read the Old Testament before, and before I heard this theory, I felt like I got slapped in the face. I was like, "What? It shares these stories how many times?" Um, I don't know. Is that vibing? Is that making sense? Any further
That's
questions or
interesting.
thoughts on
Yeah.
that?
I'm just thinking as well that like I'm thinking of the creation story as well. I'm reviewing Genesis and thinking if God had done the repeat of the creation, right? But interesting.
Ooh.
Okay, so they're just pulling from all these different sources, so that's why there's duplicates too.
So I guess if they're pulling from all these different sources, did all those different sources come from one person, just written at different times? Moses? Or did someone else write it then?
Yeah, is it essentially like for
Heck,
Jesus the Christ, like Talmage taking the different gospels and then someone taking all the Talmages, Jesus the Christ's?
Mm-hmm.
uh, I I want to be a little excessive, I guess, and also just kind of fun. I'm gonna drive in this need for the DH just a little more, and then we will
Sounds good.
go into where these stories came from a little more to answer that question.
Okay,
Um,
sounds good.
so one more set of scriptures for y'all to read. Tanner, will you take Genesis 6:19 through 20, and Nephi,
Yep.
will you take 7, 2 through 3.
Yes, sir.
19 and 20.
And sorry, do you guys know what the F hotkey is to do full screen? I don't know why my presentation is no longer
F11.
full screen. That's what I thought.
I'm not sure, but we can
Oh,
see it
there we
just
go.
fine.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, that's
All right.
better.
We're good.
All right. All right, 19 and 20. And of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark, to keep them alive with thee. They shall be male and female, of fowls after their kind, and of cattle after their kind, and of every creeping thing on the earth after his kind. 2 of every sort shall come unto thee, to keep them alive.
Does that
Nice.
match up with you guys' memory of oh, that's funny. I did Moses. Sorry, of Noah, right? Noah
Yeah,
brought 2 of
yeah.
every
I mean,
animal onto the ark,
2 of
right?
every kind. Bring them on the ark. Yeah.
Yeah.
Make sure that they
All
can
right, sorry.
reproduce.
Read your verses.
All right. Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by sevens, or, I mean, as we know, sevens is complete in Hebrew, right? So the male and his female, and the beasts that are not clean by 2, the male and his female. Of fowls also by the air by sevens, the male and the female, to keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth. Interesting. Yeah, so I
So
feel like
just
exact same stuff, right? Because like if they're taking them by sevens, that means of all their kinds, right? Of the complete amount. So of all the beasts,
well,
of all the fowls
and
there.
and even more than by sevens, at least when I at least the person that I was watching on YouTube who explained this part to me, it was someone I was watching. It's actually like males by 7 and females by 7. So you went from taking 2 animals to 14.
But is sevens, is that just like is it like more of a symbolic number? Like Nephi said, it means completeness.
I mean, yeah, that's true potentially, but it's a very different record than you have in chapter 6, right? And I mean,
Interesting.
like,
Right.
first you have it duplicated again 1 chapter later, and then second it's different numbers again. It's like, wait, what?
Interesting. Yeah, I guess that's where I felt like if you're to use it symbolically, then I feel like it's saying the same thing, right? Because they're duplicating the story, just different numbers. But if their number is complete or saying of all kinds, I feel like it's the same.
I guess the only thing that was
Maybe.
different though is taking 2 of every unclean beast, so it kind of
True.
differentiates it. So
Yeah, but
I
there's
don't know.
there's that difference there for sure.
Um,
Interesting.
2 more fun contradictions. These aren't like in the text, but just the idea. Numbers 12:13. Moses if Moses is the author, right? Assuming that he wrote the first 5 books, then in Numbers 12:13, he says that like Moses was the most humble man alive, which is like, wait, the
I mean, you've never written about that, about yourself before and make yourself feel really good.
right? Yeah, so that's funny. And then in Moses 30, sorry, in Deuteronomy 34, 5 through 6, it says how like Moses died. And it's like, wait, what? How did Moses write that he died? If he died.
He's just that good, man. He's just that good.
I mean, if I remember right, I'm pretty sure our members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints theology does not believe that Moses died. We believe he was translated, but yeah, it's still funny, huh? Okay, and now we can watch. I think we'll watch just one of these clips, unless we really like it. Then we totally have the time to watch both. But Nephi, you were saying you were thinking about the creation story. Do you guys want to learn more about some of the differences in the creation accounts, or there's some big differences in Joseph of Egypt, his account of being sold into slavery? Any any votes? Which way?
I think both sound good. Tanner?
Yeah, I think both sound good too.
Sweet. Pick your favorite,
Okay.
Joseph.
All right. We'll start with the creation. I have not tried to share video on this before. Did it come through? Are you guys seeing it?
It's showing
I'm
up. Yeah.
seeing it. We'll see if we can hear it.
Okay, I'll go back a little just in case. Can you guys hear it?
No.
It doesn't look like it's
Ah,
playing.
no audio, huh?
Did you press
Okay.
play? At least on my end, it looked like you didn't press play.
I pressed play for just a little bit and then paused it just to see if
That's
um
fair.
just to see if you get audio. Okay, I'll just try just sharing the tab. See if that makes a difference.
Genesis. Hold on, though. I need to
Hey, yeah.
now. Most people born into
Perfect. Okay.
Judeo-Christian tradition could give you a quick summary of the creation story told in Genesis 1 through 2, but few look at it critically enough to notice the problematic sequence of events that it presents. Genesis 1 starts with a featureless earth submerged in water. On day 1, God, through spoken command, creates light, then separates the light from the darkness, establishing day and night. On day 2, he creates the expanse of the sky, separating the earthly waters from the heavenly waters. Day 3, he raises dry land out of the sea, allowing vegetation to grow. Day 4, he creates the sun, moon, and stars and places them in the expanse so that time can be measured. Day 5, he populates the ocean with fish and the sky with birds. And finally, on day 6, he creates land animals, last of all being humans, specifically a male and female formed in God's image. The next chapter on the
Ah!
seventh day, where God rests, having finished all his work. But then on verse 4, we suddenly jump back in time and immediately run into confusion. Quote, "This is the history of the generations of the heavens and of the earth when they were created, in the day that Yahweh God made the earth and the heavens. No plant of the field was yet on the earth, and no herb of the field had yet sprung up, for Yahweh God had not caused it to rain on the earth. There was no man to till the ground." So at first,
Okay, so I'm gonna stop right here to clarify. From the get-go, those two creation stories, basically, I've missed that before. Um, on top of that, our previous discussion of how I don't believe there was an actual physical tree in the Garden of Eden. I think that further, further insight into the creation story of how um, not abstract we should think of this, but I guess I guess how non-literal it may be. Um, I think this is further evidence for that. Did that make sense? I don't think I said my thoughts in the right order.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that a lot of the Old Testament, at least in the first parts, describing the creation are not super 100% literal. I did think it
Okay.
was a little silly the way that he drew the water being over the stars and the earth and everything, or in the sun.
Uh,
But you know,
if I remember right, I think that's actually what ancient Hebrews thought. Uh, like, yeah, that's my understanding. They thought the world was surrounded by water. But you're right, that is kind of silly nowadays. And sorry, Nephi, that wasn't exactly G-rated, I guess, with a little bit of censorship there, huh? That's funny.
It was
Okay,
censored
so he
though.
he took us through the first account, and now we'll go through the second account. Here we go.
it sounds like we've gone all the way back to day 1, but then it describes the Earth as a barren desert, which would have to mean we're somewhere in the middle of the third day after the formation of dry land, but before the appearance of plant life. God then creates Adam, the first man, by sculpting him out of soil and breathing life into his body, even though according to chapter 1, humans aren't supposed to show up till day 6 after several more stages of creation. Next, God plants the Garden of Eden for Adam to live in. He decides Adam should have a companion and now creates land animals and birds, two groups that in the previous chapter appeared on separate days but now seem to have been created simultaneously. Adam names each animal but can't seem to find a suitable companion among them, so God puts Adam to sleep, removes one of his ribs, and fashions it into a woman. Now, there's controversy surrounding the translation of the word Selah to rib, as many of you have informed me. I'll talk more about that sometime in the future, but for the purposes of this video, we're just going to go with the mainstream translation. Alright, so Genesis 1 and 2 each provide contradictory accounts of creation. And even if you try and get creative with the meaning of
If you guys want to read and analyze, cross-exam those texts, I'll leave it paused right there for a second. Um, but this also this is not like a video bashing the Bible or trying to this is a video specifically about the documentary hypothesis. It's a great one. It is
Oh,
by
this is heresy, brother.
Jake W. Um, Anywho, so yeah, like what? Can you believe how many days were out of order from the two accounts? Just like one chapter after the other? Like, how many years have you guys read this or heard this spoken to? And like, no one talked about this ever. I was like, what? I don't know. Am I just crazy? Am I the only one who did not ever see or hear the fact that these things are not lining up? What's your guys' thoughts and take?
You take it first, Tanner, and then I'll follow up.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's crazy. Because even in our modern day, in the temple and in other things, it describes the creation period and everything, and it pretty accurately describes the first one, but not the second one. So I'm wondering if, like, yeah, it probably makes sense that these are different books put together, but then, yeah, why is the second one different? I'm not sure. It could be like a way that the people back then wrote. Maybe it's like meant to be symbolic. Maybe it was just written for different audiences for different reasons. Not sure.
I will give you a little bit of foreshadowing, and the theory that I would like to present and have come across today is your second option, that they were two books for two different audiences. Bum, bum, bum. But I'll pass the mic over to Nephi and you keep going with it.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm loving this. It's very new for me. I didn't ever think about it this way, in that maybe it's from the multiple different books that they're pulling from. I did know about the difference between chapter 1 and 2 beforehand, though. I feel like, at least in my experience, I feel like growing up, the church was very clear about how they felt that these are two different creation stories. And especially compared to Moses, in the book of Moses, that also has two different creation stories in there as well, one chapter right after another. And my understanding
Really?
of that, as I feel
What?
like was also reflected in the temple endowment, to where it shows the planning stage, I guess, right? That the first story is kind of the council in heaven type idea, that, okay, here's God planning out the point. I mean, I feel like they base it off of the book in Proverbs, or the one that Christ even quotes, right? That where there is no vision, the people fail, or that, like, who will build a tower without first counting their shekels type idea. And so this is God setting out his plan of, okay, this is how we're going to spiritually create all of this stuff. And then chapter 2 is, okay, now we're setting out and we're doing this. And yeah, there are things that, okay, maybe things change a bit, but I feel like that's reflected in the way mortality is, right? And not just mortality, but reality. In that, maybe this relates back to our previous conversation with God too. I don't see God as the snap of my fingers, everything happens exactly how I wanted it, right? That he works with the set of reality here. And so with that, I think, yeah, there were some differences maybe that had to come about post the plan. But like I said, I had no idea about the documentary hypothesis. And so because of that, I feel like this is really interesting, really new. Could shift my perspective on that, I'll have to study it some more. So I'm excited to keep going.
So if I understand right, you're saying previously in you were like infinitely knowledgeable enough to actually realize that there were two accounts, and not only that, but actually paid attention enough in church to know that they were talking about it. Um,
Definitely not the
and
infinitely knowledgeable part.
and I mean that's impressive. I felt so shocked. I was like, what? I've never heard any of this or realized this. I was so much shocked, like blaming other people. I was more shocked at myself because I knew that I had read these things, and it just went whoop whoop.
No, I totally get that.
Um,
I was just reading
but
Luke on Sunday, same thing. So I feel you.
but so if I understand right, you're saying you feel like one chapter is maybe talking about the like his plan of creation, and then the second chapter is like how it actually went down potentially.
Potentially, yeah.
Okay. Um, but what you're saying now is, but you also see that like, I mean, there's just different orders being spoken of like how it actually went down. So you're saying that you are currently open to the documentary hypothesis. Is that a
Yeah, I
false
mean, if
summary?
anything, I feel like it's, I mean, especially for instance, if we were to take like evolution theory, right? I feel like chapter one dispels evolution theory. Chapter two sounds like it's more open to it. And I feel like currently, the way that I'm seeing things, even if we were to still keep the idea that chapter one's like the pre, like the planning stage, and chapter two is the post stage, I feel like you can totally have a plan and say, okay, this day, boom, 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 by day 6, we're going to have people execute. Okay, that sounds bad. I mean, like this point of the plan executed. And that, like, if we're building a house, right? Okay, by Saturday, we're going to have the exteriors done type idea. Even though you would start the exteriors before that day, right? And so I feel like chapter 2 kind of goes more into, okay, so yeah, they had their plan, but actually man started in day 2 or something. You could say maybe that's the evolution theory in there too. I don't know if that's a point that's there. I'm not taking a stance on that either right now, but just interesting thoughts that I've been thinking. So yeah,
All right.
I'm intrigued to see how they're pulling this together.
Well, we'll finish watching this little segment on the creation, and then Tanner, I'll hand the mic over to you for some concluding thoughts, and you can kind of lead the discussion and narrative if you want when we get to here.
The word
So,
day,
Sure.
the order of events for each story simply don't match up. Was man created before plants and animals or after? Were men and women made together, or was Adam first and Eve second? There are a number of Jewish and Christian traditions that attempt to reconcile these issues, some of which I intend to talk about in future videos, hint hint. However, the documentary hypothesis proposes that the two creation stories are simply from two different sources that were not originally meant to coexist. Genesis 1:1 through 2:4a is attributed to P, the priestly source. As in many of the oldest creation stories, like those of Egyptian and Mesopotamian mythology, the earth begins as a formless ocean. God, referred to simply as Elohim in the Hebrew, is depicted as a distant, all-powerful being who creates simply by speaking his will, and the universe abides. The process of creation follows a distinct pattern. In the first 3 days, God creates each major domain of the cosmos: night and day, the ocean and sky, and dry land. Over the next 3 days, those domains are populated with celestial bodies, fish and birds, land animals, and finally human beings who are granted stewardship over the earth and its creations. The 7th day, where God rests, is an outlier and serves to establish the Sabbath, the Jewish holy day. Using narrative to reinforce religious customs is a hallmark of the P source. Halfway through chapter 2, verse 4, we switch to the J source, who gives us another creation story. You can pat yourself on the back if the sudden use of the name Yahweh tipped you off. In J's account, the earth starts out as a barren desert. J's depiction of God is much more grounded and anthropomorphic. Instead of simply commanding Adam to exist, he takes soil and physically sculpts his body and then breathes into his nostrils to give him life. Eve too has to be created manually from pre-existing materials. Also, plants and animals are now created specifically to serve humans, unlike in P, where they were created for their own sake, and then later humans showed up to rule over them. The J source continues further, covering the entirety of the Garden of Eden and Cain and Abel stories, until chapter 5, which picks up right where P left off, as if none of the other stuff happened. Now, whoever it was that put the P and J creation stories together in one manuscript obviously would have noticed the ways they conflict narratively. Probably more important to them, though, were the ways that the two sources serve to complement each other thematically. P provides a broad overview of the formation of the whole cosmos, emphasizing the structure and order God brought to it. Then J tells a more grounded story, focused squarely on humans and their relationships with each other and God. In this first example, it's pretty easy to separate the sources from each other because they're presented in distinct blocks without any intermingling. But in Genesis 30,
uh, that's the end of the video for the um, documentary hypothesis talking about the creation. Any ending thoughts you want to go with there, Tanner?
Yeah, I'm just thinking in the mind of the scribe, right, or the group that put everything together. The average person can't read at this point, right? So the only people looking at this are going to be the priests and the scribes and everything. And so I'm wondering if maybe they just felt like, okay, so this is what's the peasants are going to be able to understand. Then there was light, and then God did this and this and this. And then maybe, yeah, maybe then after that they just added some more stuff that would make more sense to them while reading it. So like, I don't know if have you read The Way of Kings before?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, I know I'm bringing that into it, but in the book, there's the men can't read, but the woman can, and the women have like their own special writing, like kind of like annotations on the side that only they read, and they don't read it to the men. And so I wonder if it's something similar to that, where it was meant for the scribes, and then the basic version was meant for the common people. Just for understanding's sake.
No. I think that's great, and I will reiterate again that this is a theory that not everyone agrees to. It is definitely a very popular one, but yeah, not everyone's on board. So I love you bringing up, I guess, some of these origin stories of how and why some of these differences might be there. Yeah, I don't know. Any closing thoughts before we move on from Unify for the creation story?
Yeah, I thought it was super interesting. I think Tanner's analysis makes great sense too. Of that, I mean, especially considering the positions, I think considering the people at the time, I'm like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I specifically loved how in the video he also referenced the different purposes behind P and J. Right, I feel like one's a lot more okay. The overview, here's the priestly, as he said, right, and then the J was a lot more in the weeds, in the dirt. Okay, how it actually happened, right?
I will say that I'm embarrassed to admit that my descriptions came from like big honking huge fat descriptions of what's going on with each of them, and I was like, that's not all gonna fit on a pretty slide, so I deleted them down to like bare bones anything.
No, I love yours. I love yours. I just mean specifically in the
So,
context of the creation stories.
yeah, well, yeah, and you're right. I think, yeah, finding out the origins of them also make more sense of the accounts and how they're written and such. Um, so, the slavery of Joseph, same video actually. What was the guy's name? So, Joseph something W. As you can see, he's linked in the slides, but he basically does the same thing, goes through the story of Joseph being taken into slavery and walks you through all these differences going on. Very fascinating. So, getting closer to the end, this is the video slash podcast episode that I watched that introduced this whole thing to me, and they do a great scholarly, fascinating job, like very interesting. Walking you through it, and it's only like an hour or something. So, if you want a real like explanation, one that is very informative and maybe not as silly and also more accurate, highly suggest watching this. It's so good. I love this channel so much. On top of that, now want to give one of their that they cite, but one of their propositions for why we have at least J and E. The origin story potentially between these two. So way back when the days when there was two kingdoms, a northern and a southern kingdom of Israel. And then, if I remember right, it's Assyria or Syria. Oh, I always mix it up. Which one
Syria.
takes out the northern kingdom? It's Syria. Okay. Yeah,
Syria.
so then Assyria. Okay. So then Assyria comes in and takes out the northern kingdom. And they've actually done a lot of archaeological work around Israel, and they've shown around Jerusalem, and they've shown that around the same time that the northern kingdom got wiped out, there is an absolute explosion of population in Jerusalem. And one of the theories behind this is that the northern kingdom had their Old Testament and the southern kingdom had their Old Testament. And when the northern got wiped out and tons of refugees came to the southern, they, in order to like promote a new national unity and help and keep everyone happy, they merged the records. Fascinating thought. Take. Any thoughts on that?
I'm just curious, do you happen to know which one would come from each side? Like, would you think that the J, for instance, would come from the North Kingdom or the Southern Kingdom. I don't know if
Oh,
there's
E
any thought there.
from the north is the theory.
Oh, E.
E from the north, J from the south.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that
And
makes sense. I mean, if I'm the one that's writing it and I'm in my homeland and then some outsiders come in, I'm going to put mine first, you know?
That too.
yeah, no, so it's very fascinating, very interesting. Also funny side note, I love if I had AI make an image for me of a Middle Eastern archaeological dig site, and it made sure to include a Middle Eastern oil refinery in the back and power lines. That's funny. I just noticed
I
that.
totally thought that was a real picture. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
I
That's
just
impressive.
realized that I'm like, well, I think that might be what's going on. That's so funny.
That's
Or power
hilarious.
plant, I guess, in the back. Yeah, super funny. Definitely got the Middle Eastern theme then. This is the book. So the podcast that I love, what they said, basically everything they say they're talking about is coming from this book. Who wrote the Bible, and they couldn't stop talking this book up, saying how it is actually a scholarly work, but it is what did he say? It's funny. He's like, it's one of the few times where a rare alien scholar can actually write and have it be like good, have it be
Interesting.
well written, to where like the average, he's like, yeah,
Interesting.
like the average person can actually read this. Like I don't remember, it's like several 100,000 copies have been sold, which for scholarly works is like crazy. So it's like very easy to turn to understand. Um, just to give a little plug in, I guess, for some opposition. I know it's a terrible picture. Here's the best one that I found for these guys, so I'm so sorry. But linked to this picture, as well as in the description of the slides, is an article on this website where they have a beastie article trying to debunk the documentary hypothesis. And to fully disclose my bias, I had yet to read it. So I basically just came across and turned so much stuff for the documentary hypothesis and loved it so much that I was like, oh my gosh, I need to present on this. And I did not do enough due diligence to present another side to you. For that, I apologize. And give you this as a potential. Oh, sorry, it is so cold in here. Give this as a potential counter argument that maybe you would enjoy, maybe not. I don't know. So, any I don't know, any random thoughts or reviews up to this point, things y'all want to talk about
I'm just curious, do you happen to
before
know what
we go?
they call their perspective, the Associates for Biblical Research, if they have a specific name for it?
No, let's just pull it up, shall we? I don't think so. Whoop, come on, come on. I'm just sharing the tab, right? So you can't see. Let me do the whole screen again. Okay. The Shiloh excavations. Um, whoa. Okay, I also just saw that it's kind of an old article. I mean, it's an old theory though. Basically, um, if you want to know more about the history of the theory, man, my phone's always in the way. I can't see my tabs for my kids, my camera. If you want to know the history of the theory, they talk a decent amount of the history of the theory in this podcast and how it came to be. So that's also very helpful. But yeah, as far as the contrarian view goes, is it a different window? I lost my tab, y'all. I'll just open it again. Oh wait, no, here it is. Okay. As far as a contrarian view goes, they give an explanation for what it is, 7 arguments for, and so it's like a beastie thing, right? And then, whoop, I skipped it. But their ultimate conclusion is that it should be abandoned. And they're like, yeah. So, a hot take you can look at. Um, yeah, these guys, I gotta see my tabs again. These guys say that people have tried to attack the documentary hypothesis before, and they still believe it, which is ultimately why I was like, yeah, I can present on something before looking at the contrarian view. So
Yeah.
that's awesome, right? That's great scholarly work, unbiased opinions on my part. But I don't know, yeah, we've now spent almost 5 minutes telling you that there is contrarian views. So I hope that's enough redemption for me to be able to say I've done my part, and yeah, maybe look up
Done
some
your research.
other opinions as well, even though I still really like the documentary hypothesis. But some fascinating, well, okay, yeah, some fascinating last connecting thoughts. Oh, wait, is it just the one? Oh wait, no, yeah, we already covered the other. Okay, yeah, so a last fascinating thought. Um, Separate slideshow. I have it in the description of this slide and the not slideshow podcast episode of the Stick of Joseph. I have it in the description of this slide and the next slide. But basically, so we talked about a potential origin story for E and J, right? Northern Kingdom, Southern Kingdom. And oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. We need to step back just a little bit. One of the biggest critiques of the documentary hypothesis is we've never found a book of J, and we've never found a book of E. I skipped that, haha. Like and I know some people are like, I don't know, the fact that they tried to combine these things for hundreds of years and like it's so rare to find anything written down in the first place. They're like, I don't know how it's, but that's probably the one of, if not the biggest critique against the documentary hypothesis. That people who are against it is they're like, yeah, you have all these duplicates and you have all these contradictions, and you can like tie together groups of scriptures and show that they have common themes among them. But where's the book of J? Where's the book of J? Where's the book of E? And we haven't yet to find a scroll of the book of E only, if that makes sense. So, yeah, that is a good point. But I don't know.
I mean, it
After
could just be
listening
old
to
enough that it just is gone, you know?
after listening to these guys' podcast, they had me convinced. So yeah, even with the cons that I have heard. But in a separate podcast, in a separate episode of theirs, I felt so validated. I thought it was so awesome because for the last couple of weeks slash months, I've been telling Brooklyn how this time reading through the Book of Mormon, I just feel like Laman and Lemuel were not super bad guys. Sorry, we're switching over to the Book of Mormon now. I'm like, I don't really think Laman and Lemuel. This is my picture of Laman and Lemuel and their family traveling through the desert. Again, AI generated. Don't you love that they're all on horses instead of camels? I thought that was funny.
Mm-hmm.
But, um, like not really. I guess I was like when I'm reading the this time reading through the Book of Mormon, I was getting the vibes more that I feel like they were like dudes who thought they were or trying to be righteous, and their dad just really they felt like it's such a rug pull on everything. And I was like, because they have all their friends, right, in Jerusalem who they think are righteous and doing good, and so I was like, I feel like what do I feel like? I guess I feel like I don't think Laman and Lemuel ever saw themselves as being wicked. I think there's just maybe a bit of a power struggle going on, and they felt like I take that back. I'm sure when they tried to kill Nephi and like those times when they did beg for his forgiveness, they were being evil, right? But I don't know. Is this making sense? Like as far as their philosophy of how they see themselves, I think they just see themselves as disagreeing more so versus being wrong. Is that
Yeah,
does that make sense?
I've definitely got that impression as I've read it again. I'm like, man, that is actually 100% most of the time reasonable response to their situation, you know? Like, I think there's a few times, like when they try to murder Nephi, like that, those aren't good. Those are bad things. But like when he's building a ship, and they're like chilling on the beach, they've got all this fruit, they're like living the life, and they're like, "Why do you want to leave? What the heck are you doing? Like, we're chill. This is paradise right here, you know." Like, I get that. Yeah, I can totally see how like the whole Lamanite narrative for the rest of the Book of Mormon is that like, oh well, Nephi was just a bad guy and he took the plates and he ran away and now we're on our own, and you know, like it's kind of yeah, that is 100% a valid perspective. You know.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I love that too.
well,
I'll just add a little bit if that's okay, Joseph, unless you're ready to move on.
uh, I will add a little. Well, I'm not moving on. I'm
Okay,
gonna
yeah, go for
add.
it, go for it,
I'm
go
gonna
for it.
connect it. I'm gonna connect it back to the documentary hypothesis, and then I'll actually turn it over to you, Nephi.
No, it's good. I was going to go on a little
Um,
tangent, so it's good to bring it back.
so, in a separate episode of the Stick of Joseph, something that these guys opened my eyes to um, is the idea that you have these different sources, right? These four sources in the Old Testament. The Deuteronomists were not just like part of a philosophical religious group in Jerusalem. They were like they were basically like a political faction vying for in this like power struggle. And they were around the time of like King Josiah. There's lots of like lots of his records and sayings is him basically going around Israel and tearing down like what's it saying? It's like basically he's tearing down like the shrines and holy places around and bringing the focus back to the temple in Jerusalem. And the reason why these things are connecting is the Deuteronomists had this really big focus on the temple in Jerusalem is the holy place, the place where you can do worship and whatnot. And we have found lots of archaeology that suggested that was not the case for a long time in Israel. There were shrines and holy places where um, people even had like, this is I think another episode of theirs. I'm sorry. This is where I'm like blowing through things.
Or
I'm
even
combining
three.
like 3 or 4 episodes of the Stick of Joseph together. But they had shrines with like statues of a male god and a female god together even. So like very fascinating stuff, ancient Israel. And basically the Deuteronomists were also the ones in power when Lehi had to leave Jerusalem. Like the the, the Deuteronomists because of this power struggle with the northern kingdom um, and different groups going within Jerusalem, they were trying to consolidate and bring all worship and power and focus back to Jerusalem itself. And there's evidences in other scripture that that was not thought of as always okay or the thing to do. And and it's very likely that Lehi going around preaching in Jerusalem and people getting mad at him and wanting to kick him out, it was the Deuteronomists that he was having foundational scriptural interpretations differences with. And like pretty big. Like the episode that I have linked in this slide is the Stick of Joseph dudes talking about how the Deuteronomists deleted references to Christ in the scriptures because they didn't fit their narrative of what they wanted to be teaching. Like,
Hmm.
isn't that like what? That was so cool.
Crazy.
So,
Crazy.
so when I read Nephi, will you read 21, and Tanner, will you read verse 22 of First Nephi 17? When I read these verses, it makes me think, whoa, I think that Lemuel and Lemuel were just Deuteronomists. So go ahead and take it away.
Them Deuteronomists. Behold, these many years we have suffered in the wilderness, which time we might have enjoyed our possessions in the land of our inheritance. Yea, and we might have been happy.
And we know that the people who were in the land of Jerusalem were a righteous people, for they kept the statutes and judgments of the Lord and all his commandments according to the law of Moses. Wherefore we know that they are a righteous people, and our Father hath judged them, and hath led us away, because we would hearken unto his words. Yea, and our brother is like unto him, and after this manner of language did my brethren murmur and complain against us.
You see that? We know that the people in Jerusalem were a righteous people because they kept the statutes, the judgments of the Lord. That's what the Deuteronomists were really big into, was the law, his commandments according to the law of Moses. Therefore, we know they were righteous people, and our Father has judged them and led us away. Oh, I don't know. I just think it screams Deuteronomist to me. But Nephi, now I'm passing it over to you, and you just hit us with everything you've learned about the Deuteronomists of late, please.
Oh man, I wish I could even recall half the things that I've heard, but I think you hit it super well. Biggest things that I'd probably add on though is just that probably biggest ones that I feel like stuck out with me were like Asherah, the female goddess, for instance, or all the temples and shrines that they would destroy and out and about Israel. Just the centralization of that power, which I feel like, and this is where I'll probably get a little tangential. Let me know if you want me to reel it into. Is I'm thinking that this is just reflective throughout all of history, right? I mean, look to the instance as we believe the great apostasy. What happened? Well, there was a centralization of power in the Pope, and they took out power from people among the people, right? You have the instance of people not being able to read the Bible because they're trying to centralize that power and lay down the law. And even nowadays, I feel like part of why the Book of Mormon is the book for our time is because nowadays I feel like there's plenty of people and plenty of ways for people to be able to access Christ. But I think that the Book of Mormon is particular in not just helping us to access Christ as the Bible does, that it helps us to come unto the true Christ, right? To seek this Jesus, as Ether says, in that we understand, okay, it's not just about the law, and it's not just also about, oh, I believe in Christ, right? But that the Book of Mormon teaches the true doctrine of Christ, and that within there, then we can be like Nephi or Lehi, as opposed to Laman and Lemuel. I see it more so as not just the battle between Lamanites versus Nephites of believers and non-believers, but more so of the struggle between believers and how they have their hearts turned towards Christ, and then the struggles within, which I feel like is more pertinent to our day.
So you get into good takeaway vibes here. You can sense that we're near the end. Um, I honestly, if there's any call of action or any change in your lives that you make that happen as a result of this presentation, I hope that you become addicted to the Sake of Joseph podcast. Um, I don't know, if you read if you listen to the OG episodes of this and others, like, oh, it's just so good, and it'll just connect with your soul, um, and I think that's about there's still value in the Old Testament, even if we don't necessarily know where it came from, even if mission presidents don't necessarily like it. Um, and I really think the value does really come from just the opportunity to connect with God through it, and I love it. I hope that I don't ruin it for y'all. Hope that you can still love it. And I felt so enlightened and educated by y'all's thoughts and comments today, and appreciate it
And
a
my
lot.
daily Old
And
Testament reading is ruined, Joseph.
buddy,
I don't think I've touched the Old
and
Testament, so you're good.
the mission president's comments worked, huh?
I guess
That's
so.
funny. And if there's do you guys have any other thoughts or comments you'd like to end off on?
I'll just add that I feel
That's
like
it.
I feel like you've blown my mind, Joseph. I love this. I love the idea of the documentary hypothesis and even the opposition to it. It's something I want to study some more, and specifically that bringing that back up with Nephi and Laman and Lemuel. I think that's so cool that all three of us kind of had that feeling this time around, which was awesome. Tanner, as you said in your studies too. And yeah, I love that.
So cool.
Yeah, I don't want to end it off, but I've always found that throughout history, people are just doing the best they can with the knowledge that they have. And I guess with this theory, it would go in line with that, how the people were just trying to do the very best they could by putting together a cohesive story and narrative for the creation, whether literal or non-literal, that's understandable. So I think that's the purpose of it, and I think that's why people do it, is because they needed something cohesive for that. But yeah, I think this has been awesome. Thank you for putting it together, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll also second the
Your
stick of
insights
Joseph too. So good. But back to you, Joe.
Oh, thank you, Nephi. Well, I think that sounds like a good note to end on, and we just look forward to the next week. Farewell, everyone.
Sweet.
Woo!